These two protesters recognize me and are telling people not to speak with me. Let's go talk to them and then expose them. Welcome back to the Nate Friedman Show.
I saw you might be talking about what we're doing. Can I talk to you guys?
No, sorry.
I saw you were talking to each other about what I do, right?
Everything we can do
Were you?
to stop this genocide.
Speak your mind. You're gonna walk away. I mean, I'm down to stand here. Because you were clearly talking about me, so I want to know what you were saying because I'm curious. Nothing? Most people just walk away, but you're just gonna stand here? That's cool. Palestinian Youth Movement. Tell me about that. You don't want to say what company you work with? How much are you paid to be here? How much are you paid to be here?
Let's welcome our next speaker, Rabbi Abby from JVP.
Liven up, guys. It's a protest. You guys look so down. I mean, this is great. You guys got a good turnout here.
If you've ever gone past an anti-West protest in New York City, you have probably seen these two people, and that's because they aren't just any professional protesters. If these protest organizations were an army, they would be the officers. So let's start with her. Meet Mette Lulu von Kohl. This is her shouting lines from her phone at a Palestine protest. She is a mixed-race queer femme born to a Lebanese Palestinian mother and Danish father. She says that she is currently living on the unceded land of the Lenape people, now colonized as New York City. Let's look at her portfolio, shall we? This is Mette again reading from her phone. You'd think that she'd have her lines memorized by now because she is an actor after all. She uses her performance to end the occupation of Palestine. On her CV, she shares that she got a BA in theater with a concentration in human rights, gender sexuality studies, and Africana studies. Now, we've seen this before because what better way for these organizations to recruit protest leaders than hiring out-of-work actors? The performance she was in here was a part of a string of performances titled Decolonially Queer. While you try to figure out what that even means, you can only imagine how well it would go in Gaza. Here's her again as one of the hired marchers at Columbia, which makes sense because the People's Forum organized that march. Remember that they used the People's Forum offices as a de facto HQ to rally up to 100 protesters to then storm Columbia, and the protest organizations want you to believe that they were all Columbia students. Now, just to be absolutely clear, this is Mette's LinkedIn. She didn't go to Columbia. In fact, she finished her master's in London 5 years before these protests even started. You will rarely see her carrying a sign, and that's because the leaders don't do that. Here she is again, waiting for her turn at the mic. This is when things seriously heat up. By the end, you'll realize your tax dollars are going to this woman, and in a way that will make your heart tremble. In a post by Anti-Capitalism for Artists, we see that Mette hosted a talk representing the Palestine Youth Movement. We also see their banner right in front of her speaking at this protest. Now, the PYM is one of the shadiest, most sinister movements operating inside America. They want to destroy the fabric of this country, and they're a lot further along than you might think. The PYM has a scholarship named after a PFLP spokesperson named Ghassan Kanafani. The PFLP, or the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, is designated as a terror organization by the United States and just about every country in the West because they've killed many Americans, took part in the attacks on October 7th, and have organized many suicide bombings in the Middle East. PFLP returns their support to the Palestine Youth Movement per their own documents, and now the PFLP is coming out of the shadows in America, literally, as I interviewed one of them right here in New York in the last video. Now remember Ghassan, the PFLP spokesperson who the PYM made a scholarship after. Well, this was his response to the idea of peace with Israel.
Why not just talk?
Talk to whom?
Talk to the Israeli leaders.
That's kind of conversation between the sword and the neck, you mean?
Well, if there were no swords and no guns in the room, you could still talk.
No.
In April, the PYM alongside the People's Forum posted clips on their Instagram of a PFLP member, Wissam Rafidi, and deceased terrorist Walid Daka, who have claimed that the US is the head of the snake. In one of the People's Forum classes, they write, "In this session, we will study the works of two such revolutionaries, Ghassan Kanafani and Walid Daka." Now, Walid commanded a PFLP-affiliated group that abducted and killed an Israeli soldier. That's what the People's Forum wants our youth to worship. Since the 7th, the PYM has co-sponsored 450 anti-West rallies in the United States. Many of their rallies have taken place in Dearborn, Michigan, and at one of those rallies, they called for the death of America. Al-Quds, one of PYM's partners, hosted the largest anti-West rally in Toronto, showcasing a swastika interlaced with the Star of David. Now, Canada will be recognizing Palestine as a state, so what they're doing is working. PYM leaders like Nadia Tanous have called for the destruction of the West by saying things like, strike at the heart of the empire.
And this panel, y'all, is talking about what is next. To strike at the heart of empire.
That's clearly talking about America. Or Mohammed Nabulsi, another leader in PYM, posting a photo of two young boys side by side with terrorists. And his wife, Lina Asi, another leader of PYM, called the photo 11 out of 10 parenting. Here is the wedding of these two terror supporters that are facilitating the protests in your cities. Now, sometimes they even go in person together. Lina Asi has a history of hatred toward Western values. She works as an advocacy manager for Palestine Legal. Now, Palestine Legal is a legal aid organization supporting the movement for Palestinian freedom in the U.S., and they've received over 2,000 requests for legal support just last year. Now, that is all code for when these guys get arrested at protests they call Lena. She worked on passing a boycott, divest, and sanction resolution at McMaster University and mobilized over 600 students. She practices BDS like it's a religion, according to her. She's also dressed up like the first female Palestinian hijacker, Layla Khalid, for Halloween. Layla is a Palestinian terrorist, an activist associated with the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, who was released in a prisoner exchange for kidnapped innocent civilians that members of her group took hostage. That's who she chooses to dress up as. And remember, Lena is not only someone our youth spends a lot of time with, but she's working as an advocate at that law firm. And guess who funds Palestine Legal? None other than George Soros through the Tide Center. Now, George Soros has given millions of dollars to the Tide Center, and now not only is George Soros paying for these violent protesters' legal bills, but it's likely that you have too. Because get this, the Tide Center administered $24.5 million in USAID grants. Now, Tides claims they didn't use the money for domestic causes, but there's no proof of that. There is, however, proof that they did get your money. If we look at the funding of PYM, they used to have Westpac as their fiscal sponsor. We've done a whole thing on Westpac in the last video where they've sponsored 15 anti-West groups, including the Palestine Youth Movement. George Soros gives Westpac money and then it gets distributed to a variety of NGOs that hate our country. However, after October 7th, Westpac ran into a lot of lawsuits, and by January 2025, they were warning supporters that they were in, quote, dire fiscal trouble. So it was time for PYM to look for a new fiscal sponsor. They landed on an NGO called Honor the Earth, who specializes in dismantling settler colonialism and racial capitalism. Thanks to the leadership overlap of PYM and Honor the Earth, the handoff came fast because Nadia Tanous is both a PYM organizer and an Honor the Earth deputy director. So here's the new money stream. PYM now takes online gifts via goodbricks.org, where the donation page explicitly notes the partnership and even provides instructions to send checks payable to Honor the Earth. That's the pipeline replacing Westpac's role. Now, in a minute, you will see the massive consequences of all of this. So the spokesperson for the PYM chapter in Montreal, Quebec, Elias Ayub, starts his morning by saying death to America and Israel. He even asked Trudeau for Canada to genocide Israel. This is who leads the marches. This is what they truly want. And in the meantime, he's just working as a UX designer at a company in Canada. PYM feels comfortable welcoming young men dressed as terrorists at their rallies. And I've asked them questions, but they're not a very talkative bunch.
Yo, I like the headband. What's that headband? I know who you are. I'm not gonna speak. Who am I? I know you. Tell me about what you support.
Now, the most disgusting thing about all this is that the founder of the Palestine Youth Movement is an assistant professor at UCLA. Now, would you want her teaching your children? Even if she isn't, she's still getting your tax money. The Trump administration, however, in a move never been done before by a US president, has tried freezing the funds for colleges that support terror. UCLA being one where they tried to freeze the funding of up to $584 million because they allowed Jewish students to be blocked from going to class.
You guys have closed the entrance. We are UCLA students. I have my ID right here. I'm being blocked off, not by the security guard, but by you two. You three. Oh, look, they're making their burger while I'm going this way. Excuse me. This is what they do. Everybody, look at this. Look at this. I'm a UCLA student. I deserve to go here. We pay tuition. This is our school. And they're not letting me walk in. My class is over there. I want to use that entrance. Well, I can't take it. Will you let me go in? This could be over in a second. Just let me and my friends go in to class.
We're not engaging with that.
Then you can move.
Now, not to mention having professors compare Israel to Nazis. We'll get back to our investigation in a second, but did you guys see that an October 7th documentary was canceled at the Toronto Film Festival because they didn't credit Hamas for the footage they used? That actually happened. The left called it a nuanced legal and security issue, while the right called it appalling to credit a terror organization for atrocities that they filmed. Now, the backlash was so severe that the film festival reinstated it, but it truly feels like you're reading two different pieces of news about the same story these days, and that's why before going out to film, it's crucial I understand what both sides are thinking so I can ask great questions. Now, the easiest way to do that for me is to read Ground News. It's an app and website where they aggregate the news so I don't have to click on each individual site to see what's really going on. If you want to see how that person in your life sees news the opposite way that you do, then the Ground News blind spot feed will do just that. It doesn't just show you what's trending, it expresses what each side is choosing not to cover. If you truly want to stay informed about what's happening around the world or how different people are reacting to it, then check out Ground News. It's one of the best ways you can support this channel, and they're such a perfect match for us that you can get 40% off the same plan that I personally use, which is the Vantage plan. Just head to ground.news/Friedman or scan the QR code to help us cover security costs for these videos and experience the news from a whole new perspective. So the founder of PYM is still teaching at UCLA with her scholarly interests that include Palestine, critical refugee studies, and the radicalization of Arab Muslim communities in the US. Now, even with all that, she has time to study third world feminism. As of recording this, a judge has ordered to restore UCLA's federal funding. This obsession of indoctrinating our youth to hate the West is growing like wildfire because you know who else is shaping the American youth? Mette. She teaches at the City University of New York. She's been trying to brainwash our young children ever since she got out of school. In 2015, she designed and facilitated after-school theater programs for high schoolers employing social justice and culturally responsive pedagogy. Urban Arts, the organization, is a tax-funded NGO in New York City. When she was in London, she campaigned for asylum seekers, contributing to Mohammed being the #1 baby name in the UK. At the Sadie Nash Leadership Project, she was an educator for women and gender-expansive youth of color. Her responsibilities included teaching a course titled Remapping the Body, and she met with students one-on-one. The students at this leadership project are as young as 11 years old, and the leadership project receives government grants. So you're paying for that. She then became a contractor for the Harlem School of Arts. Then in the summertime, she goes back to teaching gender non-conforming youth. Now it's gender non-conforming, not gender expansive. And finally, for the last 4 years, she's been working at the Research Foundation for the City University of New York. Everywhere you look about Mette, she is trying to work with young kids to teach them about gender and social justice. Now imagine your kid in this audience listening to this. Viewer discretion is advised.
Are you ready?
No.
I present to you the Iron Dome. Take it in all its glory. What we have here is the most advanced defense system on the market today. And what makes it so unique is its durability, its flexibility, its response with pinpoint precision, its indestructible ability to act as a barrier, to intercept the enemy, to keep what belongs out, out. Yet, the power of the Iron Dome are not simply these technical abilities, although they are to be celebrated. The power of the Iron Dome is manipulation. The power to manipulate the mind.
The Iron Dome saves thousands of innocent lives from terror strikes, and she made fun of it and intimidated destroying it, then for some reason turned it into some topless dance. Do you think America's children should be learning from her? Now let's talk about her teammate, because this is going to be even crazier. Together they are forming a wall and are refusing to speak. Ironic, since this group is always calling for open borders. Meet Tahir Dali. A few of you guys have actually messaging me to expose him because you've seen him at so many protests. Well, here we go. I saw him in person. Now I'd like to introduce him, but I will just let the founder of the People's Forum do that for me. Manolo dos Santos, who has been arrested multiple times for being a violent protester and spent many years in Cuba meeting with the president of Cuba.
Thank you again to the New York Society for Ethical Culture. Again, we're honored to be here. We would now like to welcome to the stage a leader of our movement, an organizer with the Palestinian Youth Movement, who for the last 18 months, it's more likely that you saw him on the streets than at home, not just leading us at the front of protest, but engaging us in analysis, teaching in our spaces, and often reminding us about why we fight. I welcome Tahir Dali.
Just to piggyback on Manolo's points, this guy truly is at just about every protest, which is why I was hoping to actually have a conversation with him. Here he is speaking on the mic with his "Gaza is the graveyard of the occupier" shirt, a shirt that PYM gives out to their members. This propaganda shirt also comes in white. Tahir, just like I saw him at the protests that I went to organized by the People's Forum, he's often signaling to other protesters. Here he is doing that at Times Square and again at the City College of New York's encampments. He graduated from NYU though, so further proof that these college campus uprisings were anything but authentic. They were calculated, and Student Justice for Palestine, for example, already had a toolkit on October 8th on how to protest. Here he is again, and you might recognize the guy behind him. That's Mustafa Ali. We exposed him for being a paid protester in a previous video, and he was arrested at Columbia, yet no record of him actually being a student there. Now, Tahir is often stationed in Times Square and college campuses. Here you see him in the middle of the crowd where he can quietly escalate things, and just look at how violent that crowd is. Out of Tahir's entire, very vast professional protester portfolio, perhaps this photo will strike you the most. Why is Tahir one of the handful of people standing behind Mahmoud Khalil, this symbol of the violent anti-West protests we've seen all across the country? Khalil has recently said that it felt frightening that we had to reach this moment in the Palestinian struggle. We couldn't avoid such a moment. Khalil was referring to October 7th.
To me, it felt frightening that we had to reach this moment in the Palestinian struggle.
This man is not a citizen who has just said that it is frightening that we, as in Hamas, had to rape and burn children alive, that we, Hamas, couldn't avoid doing that. The messaging of his shirt is subtle but important. It's a chain breaking, and the people facilitating most of these resources for the protests are the People's Forum. The People's Forum's whole mission is to teach revolutionary theory to young people. Tahir even teaches at their revolutionary summer school, so that his students rise up against capitalism and try to destroy the West. Most of the classes at the People's Forum are not about Zionism. They're about Marxism or socialism, and when you walk into their bookstore, you see books all about revolution. Roy Neville Singham, who I'm sure you know by now, a billionaire Marxist living in China, funds the People's Forum. He sold his IT consulting business for $785 million and now gives over $20 million to the People's Forum. He also just so happens to be married to Jody Evans of Code Pink, that group that's always harassing congressmen in the Capitol cafeteria.
Cruz, Israel is committing genocide. You know, they're starving children.
You know, you really should stop cheering for the terrorists.
Now, it's difficult to believe that Roy and his wife didn't know about October 7th when just a day after they had young people storming the streets showing Israel as the oppressor while innocent Israelis were still being gunned down. Now back to Tahar, you can see him wearing that same shirt Khalil was as he speaks to young people. So who is Tahar really? He graduated NYU with a degree in mathematics in 2016. He's a Palestinian American and member of Brooklyn's Arab community, and is interested in teaching Arabic in the New York City public school system. As far as I can tell, that didn't happen. He went on to join the Communication Workers of America, which is the first major national union to call upon the US to recognize Palestine as a state. Tahar worked at Verizon and now T-Mobile. Now it's very possible that the reason he's behind Khalil is because he helped rally support from his union to use union resources for the protest, or maybe it's just because he can pronounce his name so well.
Mahmoud Khalil's freedom, and this is what Mahmoud Khalil and the movement.
In Tahar's speech, he urges the crowd to join all the scheduled marches they have planned across the country. He doesn't just criticize Israel, but the US for systemically planning a genocide against Gaza at every level. This is the playbook right before you. First you blame Israel and Zionism, and then you come after America, all while teaching the young people of our country about Marxism. He made many egregious claims in this speech, but the most blatant one being this.
The most conservative estimates indicate that more than 49,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed by the United States and Israel's aggression. The real death toll is estimated to be in the hundreds of thousands, much, much higher than that.
Even the Gaza Health Ministry that is run by Hamas doesn't say that it's in the hundreds of thousands. We have people in the United States that are inflating a death toll that is shared by actual terrorists. Ladies and gentlemen, there are powerful forces living in our country who are trying to destroy the West. Now this concludes our video for today, but as always, the investigation is ongoing. If you know anything, write to me. To continue watching our investigations, check out this video where we expose a protest leader being paid $75,000 a year and confront him to his face. I'll see you there.
I believe our fundamental role is to generate political and social crisis within the American ruling class. Mass mobilizations is the primary tactic. It's pouring people, thousands and millions, into the streets.